Yeah, so one fine day, Bilal calls me up, and this is after leaving Cedar for the second time. I actually called him up and said that, yo, I need some work. Let's see if there's something that I can do. The conversation, of course, wasn't that smooth, but long story short, he had this idea of creating content similar to what the likes of Casey Neistat or Simon Sinek or even Gary Vaynerchuk were making at that time. And his idea was very simple, is that he just wanted to document material. He didn't know how to do that. He didn't know in which direction to do that. What we just knew was that we wanted to give Cedar students the exact experience that they felt physically on campus, virtually on their phones. So our entire strategy was just devised around what does a kid do when they're free? They pick up their phones. At that time, Snapchat was quite booming, Instagram stories were new. And we just knew that we had to touch a child at every single digital touch point that they were accessible to. They had Cedar email addresses, they were on social media. And the goal in general was basically to make sure that we're creating content for them to consume, to connect them with the school while they're not physically present there. This was in 2017. Well, we were lucky because we kept the team quite lean. That was our goal, was that we wanted to experiment, but we wanted to make sure that there was an end result to that experiment. And of course, that comes with that cost implication. The team essentially comprised of myself, along with a full-time graphic designer and a full-time content writer, along with 3 interns who were from the first batch of Cedar itself. They had graduated in 2017 from Cedar. We started this department in 2017, and there were some of our first few team members over there. That was one way in which we kept the cost down. And what we focused on also was just to make sure that we were using the resources we had readily available. So that ranged from our phones, this campus had a camera as well, and everyone gets a laptop. Right? There was no rocket science, there wasn't a need to invest in heavy duty software. We were learning as well at that time. So any free tool that we could get our hands on, we just downloaded and we tried to make the most of it. That's essentially how we just made sure that we're not going over budget. And then also that was our way of making sure is that if it's easy for us to use our phones to document material and to document an event, whether that be through a video, a voice note, a piece of copy, or even a picture, that could just be done by something everyone has on themselves now. Yes. Because what I knew was that schools always thought about marketing from a very rudimentary perspective. I used to work at Lyceum as well, and I studied from Lyceum too. And I remember the principal or the founder, Mrs. Emmett, saying very clearly is that they only marketed their school once, and that was in the 80s when they made an advertisement for the newspaper to say admissions are now open, and that was that. And that was a very different perspective because we were in the information age, social media readily available. Old folks are getting on Instagram, old folks are getting on Snapchat. So there was nothing new. There was no rocket science involved. What was just missing was this willingness to communicate. And that's when I knew is that other schools are going to pick up on this trend, is because what we were doing was we were communicating to people what happens on the campus. What are our students like? Other schools would have taken it to be that our child got this many A's, when our focus was never to highlight the A's. Our focus was to highlight the students for who they are and for what they are. From many people. There were some teachers, some board members as well that just thought that this was a bit of a joke. But within 3 months, those very people turned themselves around and realized was that, okay, this kid's onto something and it's picking up. Because again, the content we were making was not to highlight and to show anything off, but it was actually to give an in-depth perspective. We weren't making content along the lines of high achievements in academics. We were making content around what hobbies our students had. We were making content around information that their counselors give, but in the form of a podcast, which is a lot more relatable. And especially they saw me wearing the first uniform of Cedar, right? I was interning there. They saw that this is the guy who was roaming around with a camera in the first few years. He was the first guy to put on the uniform just for the sake of like showing and modeling. And this is the same guy now who's actually talking to us. So there's that relatability, and that's what we tapped into. That was the insight, was that if we tell the kids, if we show to the kids that we understand them, then the message we're trying to communicate will resonate a lot more. And people saw that result instantly. When I was starting off my career at Cedar, I never entered with any marketing knowledge. I never studied that in school. Didn't study anything creative in school. And so I too had that perspective that, this isn't marketing. We're not selling anything. What we are doing is we're telling a story. And for me, that was communication. So, and to this date, I would say that schools need to consider themselves to be as brands, because that's what people will relate to. That's what they are subscribing themselves to. If you have a customer, that is the child, and the client who's footing the bill, which is the parent, they both need to resonate with who you are, with what the business does, with what the school is offering. Why should they be connecting with the school? And how can you do that if you're not communicating effectively? What do you stand for? If you don't communicate effectively, what's happening inside the classroom, or what the campus life is like, or why students actually have a great relationship with certain teachers, or about why do they end up entering the school with, let's say, a lack of confidence, and exit the school as leaders within their own student body and future leaders as well. That all happens through effective communication. And I think that schools also need to just probably change the way they think of marketing and throw in the word communication in there, because that's what they really need to be doing.